started full course after having owned and operated 11 restaurants, and I did all the daily operations and development myself of all 11 units. And building 8 units in 20 months, I think it was less than 2 years, was really awesome. I loved my job. I loved being in the field, but it almost broke me. And I
Sure.
thought, this is not sustainable. And I clearly saw the benefits of smaller restaurant owners getting up to that size where they become a target for acquisition for larger private equity groups who are flooding our industry with capital. But over 70% of restaurants are single unit locations. And a lot of those are also independently owned and operated, and they're missing out on these huge financial rewards of all this capital flooding into our industry. And I thought, okay, if I had the resources, I have the know-how, and I had the background, and it was this tough for me, imagine how hard it is for a single unit operator to really, first of all, know what this playbook looks like and what the opportunities are for them to grow their business. But even if they can get their hands on the kind of know-how of how to do it, it's not advisable, right? Because you're juggling daily operations and all of the development at the same time, which I can attest is not the greatest thing to do. And then there's the issue of capital. You know, a lot of these independently owned restaurants are owned by women and minorities and by immigrant families and represent the cultural fabric of this country. And yet capital isn't readily available to them. And, you know, I just thought there has to be a better way. We can solve this problem. So I came up with the idea for full course, and I started vetting it with friends in the community, in the restaurant community, people from finance and from marketing who had owned and operated restaurants and also had industry experience as executives. And it started to take shape. And what we do at full course is we have a fund, a $20 million fund for roughly every 5 to 7 clients. And we focus on taking those independently owned restaurants that are, again, somewhere between 1 and 3 units, usually, sometimes 5. And we help them grow to a size that makes them a good target for acquisition down the road. It's usually about a 5-year investment process. We spend about 6 to 9 months getting the clients ready for investment. So there's a significant amount of consulting work that goes into optimizing the restaurant and giving it a really solid foundation in both people, operations, technology, and marketing. And we really build a solid foundation. Then we build a growth plan based on what the operators want. We sit down and do a 2-day retreat with our owner operators, and we get to their why. What do they really want out of this in 5 years? And we build a growth plan based on that underlying purpose and mission. And that growth plan has a target of usually getting them to about a $3 million profit margin in about 5 years. And to get that level of rapid growth, we focus on 4 main revenue channels. So I'm a big fan of diversified revenue in restaurants. It's something I think the industry's been missing for a long time.
We
And
learned that over the past 18 months.
we certainly did. And I've been screaming it for years. In fact, when I got hired into Focus Brands as their general counsel, the reason they hired me was because I had a product development and commercialization background. That was what I did as an attorney. And I helped them develop that program at Focus Brands. And so, yeah, things like Cinnabon vodka and, Annie Ann's pretzel mix and such. Anyway, when we're building growth plans for our clients, we focus on obviously traditional brick and mortar in a multitude of different formats, non-traditional development, airports, stadiums, arenas, colleges, universities, hospitals, product development, no surprise there, so that we can produce product not only for sale in the restaurant, but at retail to help market and promote the brand and create revenue. And last but not least, franchising and licensing opportunities. So that 5-year plan is very robust and has a multitude of different ways of supporting and stabilizing the business, which also leads to a higher valuation at exit. And last but not least, we actually use our fund to deploy capital to these brands and inject capital to make that growth plan happen. And our boots on the ground development team actually executes that plan. So if you're an owner operator, you get to focus on running the business day to day with our support from our consulting team. And we focus on opening the new units, getting the deals done, and involving and engaging owners every step of the way. But we really kind of make the capital go to work.
And what's in it for you? Do you guys get equity, or
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, so we take some minimal consulting fees up front. They're really designed to cover costs. And then when we go into development, we take a small development fee. It's 3% of sales to offset the cost of development costs and overhead. And then we take a 15% equity stake. Full Course does. That's the operating entity. The fund itself usually takes about 34%, which is, for, if you're doing the math, there is usually about 49%. One of the things that we feel very strongly about, and that does definitely set us apart from other equity groups who do similar kind of plays with emerging brands that are very early stage, is we do not take a majority interest. The way that we have this set up is truly as a partnership with independent restaurant owners, and we genuinely believe that there's room for everybody at the table, and that's one of the things that we stand behind.
And that, but eventually the idea is for the owner and the founder no longer to be the owner, right? To sell it to private equity or whomever.
Right. Well, again, back to their why, it depends. Now, obviously, for our investors, we use about 3 years to deploy all the capital in the fund to these various brands, and it's about a 5-year return on investment. So our strategy is to exit almost in full for the benefit of our investors at year 5. But an owner doesn't necessarily have to, because remember, they're sitting on 51% of the equity. It's conceivable that they can only do a partial exit and retain some of that equity for the second round of financing with the next private equity group. And that's another reason why it's so important, if you can, to allow owners to retain that majority interest, because I've seen a lot of owners get up to 6, 7, 8 units, but only be holding on to 10% equity at that point. They're so diluted because they've had to do multiple rounds of financing. Our strategy is to come in early, build it big, definitely big enough that it's going to be an interesting acquisition target for a larger private equity group. And that's the play that we're making. Underlying this entire concept, Brett, is a really simple play on economics. When you think about it, 1 to 3 restaurants are valued at about 2 times their profit margin. So you're looking at, 2 units, let's just say they throw off $250 a year. That's, $500,000 in profit margin times 2. So you go to sell those restaurants, you're sitting on $1 million, not too shabby, right? But when you go to sell 10 units, and let's say they're throwing off $2 million in total profit margin, the multiple that's attached to those is 10 or higher. And the reason for that is private equity wants a complete turnkey investment. They're not operators. They don't want to get in there and cook pizza with you. They're not interested in that, right? They're looking at it more from a financial investment model. And when you have a smaller restaurant concept that's like 1 to 5 units, it's implied that you're only available for purchase to a substitute buyer who's going to step into your shoes. And therefore, there's just not as much, as high of a multiple, as much value placed on the business as an ongoing potential investment, right? You want to get to those higher levels of not only operations, people structure, right? Having the whole organization behind what you're doing, and the sophistication of running it like a business where there's not a linchpin person at the top, right? So we really help our owners mature into brand leaders as opposed to being in position in the restaurants. And that's a big part of what we do over this process.
But also, once you have enough locations, say 8 or 10 locations, and you have a proven economic model, which also probably makes you more attractive to buyers, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, you show that the brand can be replicated across multiple different locations. At that point, you've probably activated franchising. You're seeing the interest grow in the brand. We activate marketing and obviously PR services as well. So we're bringing a lot of shine to a business that already has wonderful heart and soul, and making it really something that just becomes a more attractive investment down the road.
Cool. So I want to talk about your big idea for the restaurant industry, which is an industry built, I'm quoting you, I think, an industry built with putting people first, built on a new, solid, sustainable, replicable and profitable business model, which is
Yeah.
basically what you just said.
Yes. I mean, so this is something that I feel very strongly about. And, I think that restaurants are not just about food, they're really about people. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned as an operator is yes, the food has to be good. It's a very competitive marketplace, right? Everyone serves great food. But if you don't treat your people right, they're not going to treat your customers right. And if you don't treat your customers right, you're not going to have a healthy, sustainable, growing business. And so I think one of the biggest problems we faced as an industry is in really fashioning futures and careers for the people that we work with, fashioning benefits, and really meeting them where they're at. An overwhelming amount, it's over 3/4 of the industry's workforce are under the age of 34. And even more so, we're seeing rises in those who are employed who are under the age of 18. And so this whole next generation really thinks about jobs differently. They think about careers differently. And as an industry, I think we've been a little slow to react to and implementing changes, I think, that meet them where they're at. And I think a lot of owners do that by trying to win over employees with money. So they say, oh, I'll throw more money at hourly wages, or I'll throw more money at benefits. And then they pick, right, the wrong benefits to offer to people, right? So I would love to see a shift where we are people first and we are building career opportunities and leadership opportunities and educational opportunities for the next generation of restaurant leadership. I think that one of the ways that you do that is by having obviously a profitable business model. And one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that you have to have efficient and productive labor. It's not necessarily about labor as a percent of sales. It's about how efficiently you're using that labor and whether or not you're putting it to good productive use. And so I think that there's been really good learnings around that, which I hope will awaken folks to the idea of paying more sustainable wages, bonuses, and benefits to the folks who are dedicated to this industry and in service of people.
So you said that often restaurant owners and operators don't provide the benefits that their employees are looking for. What are some examples of like what they're offering and what their employees want?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story, and this is going to put a little egg on my face, but it's true. So in my second year of restaurant ownership, I think we had about 7 units at that point, definitely over 300 employees. And I really felt strongly that we needed to offer healthcare to all of our employees. And I got my partners on board. I lobbied and lobbied. I ran the numbers. I did all the financials. We had several offers on the table, ran the numbers with different insurance brokers. And we unveil this huge benefit at the end of the year. And of our 300 something employees, like 3 signed up. And I was crushed. I was so gutted. And then I was somewhat humiliated. I'm not going to lie. It was just a huge, I didn't read the room, right? I didn't ask. I just assumed, because that's what we talk about in the industry for years. We've been like, oh, healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. But what we were missing was that a lot of them had state-sponsored healthcare that they were concerned that if they took another benefit, that they would be disqualified from other state and federal benefits they were receiving. A second group were students employed and who were part-time and were on parents' insurance. A third group were covered by their spouse or partner. And so that didn't really resonate with them to get more healthcare benefits that they couldn't even use. And so we went back and we did a survey. And do you know the number one thing that they asked for?
What did they want?
Paid time off. So simple, so obvious, right? Because a lot of hourly employees don't make money when they're not working and they can't afford to take a day off. That's why they come to work sick. That's why they work even when they're exhausted and they've worked 3 shifts back to back. And it was just eye-opening for me. And as a person who has a lot of empathy and understanding, I thought, okay, I clearly missed the connect there. But the lesson there was ask. And when we do ask our clients, employees now what they want flexibility and the option to choose. And so one really great example that we have implemented with a local client here is they've done, similar things like 401k matching and retirement planning and offer that as a benefit to all of their employees. But for a lot of younger folks, they just aren't interested in saving for retirement. But you know what they all have? Student loan debt, or they're going to have to pay to go to school and take out loans, or they have scholarships and could use extra money for school. So now they offer a flexible benefit. They will match a certain amount of 401k. If you choose that plan, they will match just traditional matching, like we all know what it is, or they will match a similar amount for your student loan debt payments or as tuition to school if you're in school at the moment. And that is a benefit that's targeted to the widest variety of that age group, right? That's staffing all our restaurants right now, 18 to 26, I think, is the largest population. So that's an example of rethinking what it is to connect with those employees that are coming up in the restaurant industry, and they are the next gen of leadership.